So before getting into some of the detail, we'll talk about some of the bigger picture items of the budget. I do just want to point out that we will have 3 additional presentations on the adopted budget prior to the vote. So we will have 2 informal presentations, sort of the coffee type format that we've had in the past. We will have one on Thursday, May 7th at 10 a.m. We will have one on Monday, May 11th at 12 p.m. at noon. And then on Tuesday, May 12th at 6 p.m., we will have our formal budget hearing, which is our required board budget meeting the week before the vote on the 19th. So we will have 3 more opportunities that we will present. The first 2 of those will be much more informal as we've had in the past. So I'm going to kind of buzz through this quickly. This is the information that sort of backs up what is being proposed and brought forth to you as the board for adoption for the 2026-2027 budget. Before getting into the numbers, I just want to say that this budget, we're very proud and we're very happy to say that it's not cutting any programs or any offerings. It's not cutting any people's positions. Nobody's being laid off. Nobody's losing a job. We did have, we know of 4 staff members at the end of June that will be leaving us. 3, not counting our superintendent. I guess we have 5. We have 4 others. We have 3 instructional positions and 1 support staff position. One of those instructional positions will be replaced. 2 of them will not, and the support staff position will not. Those will be absorbed through attrition, which will recognize a significant savings for us. And Bill will talk about those in more detail at the end. So the budget that's being brought to you for recommendation for adoption is a 1.05% increase over the current year 25-26 budget, with a tax levy increase, which is our allowable tax levy increase of 2.26%. So that is tax cap compliant. That will require a simple majority vote. At first glance, you might look at that and think, why would we need a 2.25% tax levy increase for only a 1% increase in spending? Well, there's a couple reasons. First and foremost is we continue to sort of wean ourselves off and scale back the amount of reserve funds that we're using. If you think back 2.5 years ago, we're coming off federal relief monies post-pandemic. We had this 4-year plan to utilize between $750,000 and $800,000 worth of reserves over a 4-year period, so we're going to reduce that amount by another $75,000 for next year. So that's an additional revenue we have this year that we don't quite have as much as next year. And then also the continued shift and the continued stress, if you will, that's being put on our tax levy compared to state funding because of our district's profile and our characteristics, which we'll talk about in a minute. If we look at the 3-part, this is the 3-part format of the budget. This is a format that we're required to present our budget program, which is with all districts, the majority of spending. The administrative piece, which, just to provide some clarity, this is not just administrator salaries or administrative personnel. This includes everything, all expenses associated with the Board of Education, the clerk's office, district meetings and votes, the central admin office, which is the superintendent's office, the business office, audits, our liability insurance, cooperative purchasing through BOCES, labor relations and policy services through BOCES, personnel services through BOCES. So it's really a wide range of expenses. And really that big increase is due to the strong ties to personnel. This is a year for all districts where personnel costs are increasing significantly, mostly in the form of health insurance. So any expenses that are heavily tied to personnel, you can see big increases. And then lastly, the capital portion, which is really 2 components. It's the central service function of the district, so all of our buildings and grounds and maintenance, and our operation costs, and then our debt service, which is our principal and interest payments. We are seeing a reduction in our debt service, the impact on the budget this year, because we're converting short-term borrowings associated with our last capital project to long-term financing. So some of our interest rates and borrowing costs were less than what we anticipated, so we are seeing a break there. So again, just over 1% total spending, 2.26% on the tax levy. I'll go through this slowly. This is all mine. My team here at HCS loves this. So just some of the things that we have to contend with on an annual basis. In November, when we start the budget process and all the way throughout.
Back up one.
Sorry?
Do you want to back up one or no? Oh, you're not
No.
leaving that one out?
No.
Okay.
Scale again?
Yeah. My bad.
The budget process starts with, ends with, and the focus all the way through is our student needs, right? What is our goal? What is our mission? To recognize every student every day. And that truly is what we do throughout the budget process. Kevin's going to talk shortly about trends and changes in our student needs, so I don't need to get into a lot of detail on that. But first and foremost, and a bit of a concerning note, is our enrollment continues to slowly decline. So for the first time that I can remember, our K-12 enrollment has dipped below 500. With our 18 pre-K students, we're at 512 kids pre-K-12. So it is looking likely that we will begin next year with under 500 K-12. However, with that declining enrollment, we've seen an increase in the number of our students that either have an individualized education plan through the CSE or are receiving some sort of accommodation under IDEA in the form of a 504 plan. That results in additional staffing and additional services. We are currently in that 33 to 35% range of our total population as either having an IEP or receiving accommodations through a 504 plan. That's not unique to Hamilton. And I know Kevin's going to talk more about this, so I'm going to pass on it. But this is typical. This is what we're seeing both in the region and across New York State. So we do have more students with needs. We also have more students taking AP classes than we've ever had. We have 8 AP offerings in our high school currently, with 139 students enrolled in those classes. Those are not unique individuals. We have students that take more than one. But when you look at that, it's really quite remarkable that we're able to do that for such a small school. And that we're able to achieve, as Chris pointed out, such a high rate. It's remarkable. It's a testament to the work that you do, that all these people do, our faculty and staff do, and to our kids. But it does make it hard when it comes to building a budget. Like any other employer, we do have contractual obligations. 70% of all of our expenses are personnel costs. Okay? This is the year of health insurance. We're in better shape than most. We're part of a consortium. Our premium increases went up 7% for next year. But to give you some context, 7% on our health insurance line in the budget for our active and retirees, active employees and retirees, equates to about $225,000, which is more than the 2.25% of our tax levy increase. So when you think about that, the allowable increase to our tax levy this year isn't enough to cover the budgeted item for health insurance premium increases. Okay, so again, it just demonstrates the challenge of all the moving parts and how to make this work. Again, as homeowners, we know what's happening with utilities and maintenance costs. Everything's going up. All contractual services are going up. Every time we have to pick up the phone for somebody to do something for us, it's more expensive. Through February of this year, our utility costs were 23% higher than they were through February of last year. It shouldn't come as a surprise that everybody's feeling that pinch. But basically everything, the cost of doing business, the cost of operating, regardless of small fluctuations in enrollment, continue to increase. So those are kind of the 3 things on the expense side, and then briefly 2 things on the enrollment or on the revenue side. We've talked about this at length. We really have 2 primary sources of revenue: foundation aid from New York State and the tax levy. The executive budget proposal that was released in January would see us receive a 1% increase in foundation aid, or our basic operating aid, which equates to about $39,000. Each of the one-house proposals from the Senate and the Assembly would call for a 2% increase for us. So an additional $39,000. We budgeted 2%. If we get 1, we'll deal with it. Fortunately for us, this isn't that big of a deal as it is for other districts, because we're more heavily reliant on our tax levy. Most of our neighboring districts are the inverse. So roughly 2/3 of their budget is funded through state aid, 1/3 through the tax levy. So 1% of foundation aid for them is a lot more significant than it is for us, okay? The state budget's not finalized. This is the 7th straight year that the budget is late. It doesn't affect our timeline. Full speed ahead for us. We still have to complete our budgets and get ready for our vote on the 3rd Tuesday of May. So it's a hard way to have to do things, but again, we're fortunate because we're not as dependent on foundation aid. Quickly, 2 things that are in the executive budget proposal and that we expect could be tied into the ultimately the adopted budget that have no impact on 26-27 budget is a universal pre-K mandate, which would require all districts to provide pre-K for 4-year-olds beginning in 28-29. We're all for this. Similar to the next item, I think it's well-intentioned, but it to date has not been well thought out. It's going to happen. We're all for it. We'll do what we can to get there, but there's a lot to come on that. And then lastly, electric school buses. Just recently, just within the last day or two, I believe, there has been some legislation introduced that would ease some of the mandates as part of the budget development talks. In the single house budget proposals, there were no changes to any of the dates of the mandates. However, there were some proposals calling for additional funding to help with infrastructure upgrades that are needed. So again, we're slowly moving through this process, preparing as we need to. We'll see what happens as things continue to change. And then lastly, the tax levy. We know, we get feedback. We know that this community has expressed to us that they are feeling taxed, right? Both literally and figuratively. It's hard to believe we're going to enter our 15th year now with the tax caps. We've been through this 15 times. Here at HCS, we've had 2 years where we asked for an override. Last year, as you know, 9.2%. I believe it was 14.15 was the other one. It was a bit of an anomaly. Our calculated increase was actually negative. So it's a bit of an anomaly, but last year we had the significant override. There is an increased risk involved, I would say, and based on the feedback that we've gotten, this is the only chance people have to vote no on their tax liability, if you will. The other taxing entities, the other taxing municipalities do not have a public vote. So we've heard that feedback after last year's vote and through the capital project votes. So we are certainly cognizant of this and we have to be aware of this. But I'd like to point out, if you think back to that first slide when I mentioned the shift in the dependency on the tax levy. In the tax cap era, which is, again, 15 years since 11-12, the total spending at HCS has increased 43.68%, with an average annual increase of roughly 2.5%. And that includes debt service for capital project, and it includes all of our programs. During that same time, our foundation aid through New York State has only increased a little over 30%, or on average 1.7% per year. So if you look at that, foundation aid increases are not enough to keep pace with the expenditures. So subsequently what happens, we have to increase the tax levy at a greater rate. During those 15 years, the total tax levy's gone up 60.83%, an average annual increase of 3.22%. It's what's been necessary to balance the budget. Even with a 9.2% increase last year and an override 10 years or so ago, I can stand here and say pretty confidently, pretty emphatically, I think that these numbers are very reasonable. I think it shows that we've been diligent, that we've been respectful, we've listened to people while understanding the burden that's been placed on our taxpayers. But we do know that there is that increased burden. So this is always something that we're cognizant of. So with that, is that it, Bill, for me? Bill's going to talk briefly about the staffing and the programming, specifically with the 3 positions that I talked about, and then either one of us can take questions at the end.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
I want to circle back to when Matt started his presentation. He alluded to the districts in this area and across the state that are eliminating positions and people are losing their jobs. They're in the numbers of 70, 50s, 20s. Like, there's a significant amount of staff that are losing their jobs because of the budget process. And I'm happy to say, because of the culture we have here and the flexibility and the collaborative nature we have here, no one's losing their job. We have 3 positions that we can absorb through attrition because people are willing to be flexible. And we have a retirement in our ELA department. We have a very talented, eager, dual certified staff member that is willing to be half-time ELA and half-time art and not lose any student offerings. Through our SEL support, we have a teacher on special assignment that is retiring, that has done a tremendous job putting in some processes in place for our MTSS framework, and through the leadership of Kevin and his team and our counselors and school psychologists, we are confident that through their work, they can absorb all of those duties and still provide every service that our students need. And lastly, we have a teacher aide that is retiring, and we have a student who is graduating that no longer will need that one-to-one aide. That one-to-one aide can then slide into that position. So those are 3 positions through retirements that we can absorb through attrition and not lose any supports for our students. And I think that's a real testament to the work of our administrative team, our faculty and staff willing to be flexible and collaborative. And that's the culture here that makes things work and really makes this a special place. Matt, can you just go to the next slide? So again, retiring teacher, we have a dual certified teacher that can cover both ELA and art and not lose any of our offerings in either art or ELA. Our elementary art teacher is willing to take on the yearbook. We have a social studies teacher who is willing to take on a journalism class. He was heavily involved in journalism and the EP when he was in school and is really eager to take on that responsibility, that elective. Next, Matt. So no reduction in course offerings. Every existing ELA and art section will remain available to students. We'll be able to maintain diverse programming, support student choice and engagement, preserve staffing stability, and achieve a cost savings through attrition. The SEL support, the framework that Kevin and his team and the good work of the teacher that is on special assignment putting those processes in place, again, those supports and that MTSS structure that Kevin alluded to earlier are going to remain in place. We'll be able to staff the SEL room. It will look a little different. It'll be staffed by an aide, but we'll be able to have that room open and available for students to take advantage of. And our director of PPS, SEL room, CSE chair, school psychologist, SEL staff, school counselor. It'll be a collaborative effort, team effort to continue to support students through social emotional learning. Again, all programming is preserved, student supports remain strong, and a really fiscally responsible approach to replacing that position.